is about adoption. I was talking about variables before. We have seen how much time it has taken to shift hardcore BlackBerry users to iPhone. I don't like it. I don't like typing on screens. This was a common thing we have heard. 3 years over, people are getting around to it. And this is exactly something we are seeing in the wearable space. Whether it is using your head to engage with the glass or using gestures to do things. First month or 2 months with our users are tricky. It's going through that hoop of training and then getting around to learning these new ways of interaction, which takes time. Case in point is the smartphones we use. There are so many features that are already existing on our smartphones. We download a new app, we use it for 2 days, a week, 2 weeks, and then we are over it. It's a combination of the use these apps can deliver, answering a question, as you rightly mentioned, the problem that we are trying to solve, as well as we as human beings trying to learn new ways of interacting. So technology is available. The challenge is the adoption. Adoption, two-part problem. One, as a user, I have to learn it. Two, the service provider has to go far out from their comfort zone to make it easy. And that two combined can start delivering real value. So as technologists or people who are working in the technology space, I think for all of us it is important not to lose patience with some of these technologies, not to rule them out, not to declare them failures. Staying with them, sticking with them, slowly the benefits will start coming our way.
Virtual reality might be a very good example of that. It's something which has been around for a long time, but only now is coming into use.
Absolutely. Julian,
yes. I do share what has been said so far. Just trying to elaborate a bit further, I think that I always take the end user-centric approach. Now, today we are in a position, in order to drive adoption, and I agree with you, and scale, we are in a position to leverage some of the, I would say, trends that are emerging, so like clouds, broadband connectivity, or ubiquitous connectivity, mobile devices. And these should be leveraged in the direction that you need to reduce the cost of failure and increase tremendously the pace of new services as well as service adaptation. So in order to drive adoption, just to elaborate a bit further, the user will drive adoption. If a service doesn't work, we phase it out. But we need to reduce the cost of failure. And in order to do that, what I see is a platform in a broader sense of it, where you have providers and users that form a multi-sided market. So basically, they interact to say, okay, this is relevant, this is fine with me, go ahead and provide feedback. But this platform requires public-private partnership, requires access to capital, requires regulation, as you were saying, standardization, access to information, openness, accessibility, availability. So there are a set of tools that the regulators need to put in place. But as a regulator, you can facilitate, you cannot push. That's our view, adoption. So that's our perspective.
That's important because as we roll into the social phase of deployment of these technologies, you mentioned this idea of barriers to adoption, and this isn't just due to lack of interest or understanding. I mean, the fact of the matter is, in many of these environments, these are people's livelihoods and ways of doing things, and distance amongst many of the stakeholders here, for which I like to make sense of for myself about this. About technology enables a faster flow. And what we have built around with things like professional flow or floods destroying our livelihoods. So we build these barriers to protect ourselves. And I think we're seeing that in some ways at a larger social and economic scale, that barriers to adoption aren't just about, say, lack of having a use case. It's about an older or more embedded or legacy system, and the people who do make their living on that resist those. So I'm curious, without just saying sweeping away these people and sweeping away this generation, how can we try and transform these into some positive opportunities? So, for example, in printing press, you might not be producing the newspapers in East London anymore, but you have a role in the new economy of digital going forward.
Well, I mean, it comes down to the whole omni-channel debate that goes on at the moment. We talk about it, retailing is retailing is not only about a store, but it's also about an online presence, and it's a matter of combining the two. How do you use your app while you're in the store, while you're in a competitor's store? And it's the same thing with media and publishing today as well. I had a question on Twitter yesterday. I put a picture of headline on Instagram, and I was asked by someone, "You read the newspaper? How quaint." But I'm of a confused generation because I subscribe to 3 newspapers and I pay for 3 paywalls at the same time. It's a bit of an information overload, but that is where we're at this stage, is where do you go? You've got all sorts of opportunities and options out there. And yes, I am as loyal to the New York Times as I am to Gulf News today. As diverse as these publications may be. And we're getting there, and I think, as you said, there have been barriers along the way. Coming back to what you talked about earlier, if you talk about online payments, we all heard about Apple Pay and also the Now, the only thing that was holding it back was NFC technology all these days. And I remember a couple of years ago having a discussion with someone in one of the banks about NFC. And what he said NFC stood for was not near field communication. It was no effing chance. Because you had Apple there saying, we're not going to adopt NFC. And although the RTA here said the Metro is going to be working with an NFC-enabled device, if you had an iPhone, you could use it. And all of a sudden, it just took Apple saying, we put NFC in the iPhone 6, and the rest of the industry moves forward. So yeah, you have got one little player at times who can hold it. It can be an acquiring bank in this case, or it could have been one of the telecom operators, or it could have been a hardware provider.
That's a great example. So it's about getting these key players engaged in a way which flips that switch. Any other thoughts before we open it up for questions?
I think the key for me is, are we reaching a point where all the must-have innovations have happened? Where you really had to solve a problem has been solved. With all these things around digital payments, wearables, we are reaching a point of nice to haves. As innovators, it will require a lot more effort to convince the users to change their existing behaviors. The cost of switching is higher. There is something existing already where the task is being done. So why do I need to do an NFC? Why do I need a digital wallet? That value delivery needs to be explained very clearly, where the articulation is missing, and we ourselves, us innovators, are to be blamed on making it overcomplicated. However many wallets have been launched globally, we overcomplicated it, loaded up with whatever we had to, and didn't make the experience simple. Apple's task was cut out, but they combined a use of ease, but having the muscle power to talk to the value chain and say, yeah, you better fall in line. So it's that combination of going beyond for these nice to have moments where technology can actually solve a problem better than the way it is being solved. It's not like there is no solution existing. So effort on our part is going to be much higher.
Today, thoughts?
Not to repeat myself, I think we have a couple of examples here in the UAE. If you look at limo service, I'm talking about Uber and Careem. These companies are showing a model which is basically leveraging what people have on assets that are not theirs, and defining a different way to access taxis and limo in Dubai. Again, these kind of companies, this kind of DNA is needed in order to bring, I fully agree with you, relevant things that will push the adoption and reduce the cost of switching. So that is the perspective. We should facilitate these companies, these kind of different DNA entities to step in. The assets are already here. Here, Dubai is a huge investment in terms of roads, ports, I would say airports. I mean, let these companies find the gaps in terms of utility for the customer and let them drive the business model.
So it's about unlocking assets that are already embedded in place.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is sort of reflects Peter Thiel's recent view around the idea that everything has been kind of innovated as well. But I think that might be the case in markets where there is a very rich asset base, but a lot of the world still is trying to struggle to achieve those assets. So there's a dual function there at the global scene.
I mean, if you look at about it in I had the pleasure of meeting Nolan Bushnell earlier this year. Nolan Bushnell, for people who don't know, was the founder of Atari, Chuck E. Cheese, and Steve Jobs' ex-boss at Atari. And he was talking about driverless cars and where driverless cars are going to go. And he said, the moment you've got a driverless car, you've got a car that's safer to drive. You can be doing whatever you're doing, so you're a lot more efficient. It's going to be less accident prone. So you have fewer accidents, means insurance rates go down. You don't need to own your own car. It will come pick you up whenever you need it. So you avoid traffic jams, you avoid parking problems. And if you look at it, most cars, and most of us who own a car, how much do we use it? The stats are 90% of the time, or more than 90% of the time, the car's parked. A simple thing like a driverless car goes away towards changing all of that. I mean, if we talk about acquiring those assets a lot cheaper, a lot more efficiently, something like that works. Now you take the example of Uber, and Uber has spoken about it. One of the reasons why Google invested in them is the driverless car. They've got the app and the driverless car element into it, and you make all those things zero.
That example is fantastic in two ways, because one, you look at the things holding driverless